Alright, that's a lot better. It'll be a lot easier to work on this now that it's not completely crusted and nasty. 2018, 2018. So that battery is about 5 years or so, a little more than 5 years old. We may be able to recover it. First thing I noticed was we've got some gas. Got a dark yellow color. Smells like old gasoline, so that's definitely going to be something we're going to want to do straight away, is drain that old fuel. Down here, follow the fuel line here, that's the filter, goes into the carburetor. Most likely we're going to have a carburetor bowl full of sludge and goo, so most likely to get this thing running, if it's even, if the engine will even start at all, if it even has any hope, would be to clean the carburetor, put fresh gas in it, probably start right up, no problem. But maybe check the oil too. Don't want to break it. It looks pretty good and clean, and it doesn't really smell like fuel. Not super runny, but probably gonna need an oil change too, but I think the oil's good enough that we can try to start it. Battery's completely dead, so I'm gonna have to jump start it with a 12-volt battery. Jump start, and we'll just see, will it start on starting fluid? Will it do anything, right? Air filter actually doesn't look that bad. So I'll go grab some starting fluid and a battery, and we'll see where we get with this. Well, I got a battery here. I think it's good enough for this mower. If not, then I'll have to move one of the vehicles closer. Can I prop this up so that it will stay up though? Evidently not. Probably check the water inside that battery too. But being that it's only just over 5 years old or so, it probably shouldn't be that dried out. Never know though. No sinister sparks when I hook it up, so that's good. What will it do when I hit the key? Absolutely nothing. Might have to push on the brake pedal though. Okay, so we have apparently no electrical power, or maybe my jumper battery is completely dead. I have a little automatic float charger on that thing, and it said it was good, so we've got nothing at all. So may need some diagnosis here. Where would I even start on this? Well, I would start at the ignition switch right here, because we should have a 12 volt, continuous 12 volts up to that switch. The switch is going to turn on and off, so it's going to send 12 volts out from there to the ignition system and then to the starter. So I may go get a test light or a voltmeter or something so that I can pull this switch out and see if I have any sort of 12 volt battery. Also, I need to verify that this battery I'm trying to use has anything in it at all. Okay, well, the tools that I have available to me here are the, no joke, $4.99. I'm pretty sure we got this for $4.99. DVOM, digital voltmeter, digital multimeter. Nothing wrong with this thing. What did I have it on? I was using on amps. No, we don't want that. Volts. Okay, it was already on there. Volts. DC. What do we got out of this battery? Ooh, 12.8 actually. So this battery should be doing something. I also brought this light with me so that I can verify that the battery is actually able to handle some sort of current. And it will be a useful test light for when I try and test these ignition circuits. Will it light? Look at that. So this lawnmower, this tractor should be doing something. Let's see if the battery or the light dims. Look at that. Nothing. So next step, we're going to the ignition. They did say that they replaced something, some sort of ignition component, probably on the engine, probably an ignition coil, or actually this almost looks like a nice new starter to me. Maybe they put a new starter on it. But okay. Is it just a case of bad ignition switch? What's this little button? Look at this yellow button. There's a yellow reset button. Plug that back in. Don't tell me this is going to be some fancy electric ignition. Oh, that's probably for your reverse, isn't it? That's you press and hold the button when you want to go full speed in reverse or something. Or reverse when you're mowing, I bet, right? Okay. It looks easy enough to pop it out. So this is the connector that I pulled off the back of that ignition there. Let me make sure that I've got my test light hooked up the way I want it. I'm going to connect one end of the test light to ground because I'm checking for key on power. Actually, we're checking for solid power at all times, as well as key on power. So to verify that the light is working, I should touch the B+ at the starter solenoid here. Oh, actually, it's going to be there should be an actual solenoid somewhere. Like my other mower has a solenoid. But it looks like that harness goes somewhere underneath. So I hope the starter solenoid's not down here, inaccessible or something. Most likely that's going to be the case, right? Is it working? Okay, we at least know that the light's working. So I can test. I should have some sort of hot here. There we go. So I've got one wire that's hot. It looks like red and white. There's two red and white wires coming into the back of that connector. I think from here maybe I should try and get this ignition out of here so that I can actually show what I'm doing. Trying to decide the best way to do this without breaking these fragile plastic pieces. Looks like I can pop this whole entire console thing out. Look at that. Pull the wiring through the back maybe. Actually seems to be better access through the front. Interesting that the switch is actually labeled. It's got little letters, so I'm going to assume B for battery, S for starter, L for lights maybe, because usually you can control your lights from this switch too. It would be like, I think that's your lights, that's on, that's start. Okay. A1, A2, and M. I don't see any like corrosion. I don't see any corrosion on the terminals like it got super wet, so that's a good sign. If it did end up being a faulty ignition switch, I'm sure we could pull it apart and maybe clean it. And if that still could not be done, we could probably hotwire it to at least get it running. I would love to retain the switch, the key switch, but if needed, I could always turn a flip on and then press the start button. You know, I don't know. So B, yep, that B terminal does line up with the battery hot that we found earlier. So that's my battery hot. Let's see what happens when I put it on the starter, like S. Ooh, look at that. That's a good sign. So then, our problem most likely lies on the other end of this cable, wherever our starter solenoid is located. You know that? Let me check the light circuit too. L. I'm assuming that one doesn't seem to work. Does the ignition do anything? Do any of these other wires turn hot? I don't know how this is wired. I don't have a diagram. All I have is some basic system knowledge. I know how it has to work. I know how this 12-volt system has to work, right? It has to have a hot at all times. It has to have a switched ignition, and it has to have a starter signal. So we know that our starter signal is good. We don't have an ignition signal. I'm assuming this is the lights because these green wires, and I think a blue wire too, ends up there by the headlights. There's a blue wire here. Let's see if this does anything. So, how about this white one? That must be our ignition hot. So that's probably a good sign that we have everything we need to start this thing. It's just it's not getting to the starter solenoid. So does that mean that I could plug this back in, put the key in? What do we do here? Jumper cables. Ground to the engine block somewhere. Can I get in there? That engine seems to be locked up a little bit. My other mower does that when I let it sit too long. It like freezes up. So hopefully we can get it unseized. That's not a great sign, but it is moving. Oh, here we go. There we go. So before I attempt to actually start it, I'm going to crank her over and get some oil splashed around. That's a good sign too. It sounds like it has compression. Now, let me turn the key on. All right, let's try some starting fluid. I have a good feeling about this. Ooh, that air filter looks pretty nasty. Might have to take care of that. That's the choke. Okay, so it also does not even attempt to fire. So the next step from here, I'm gonna have to take the spark plug out and see it. You know, maybe the spark plug's just completely soaking wet from many attempts to get it started, sitting, who knows. Look at this. I grabbed this 5/8 spark plug socket and I'm like, what's wrong here? I've never seen something like this. This is a 1/2 inch drive, 5/8 spark plug socket. Who is going to use a 1/2 inch drive on spark plugs? I've never seen that before. I discovered, as I suspected, that the hood should be designed to come off easily. Of course, it's the size that I did not grab the extension for. That's not seeming to be a problem. Oh yeah, soaked. Wow, like dripping wet soak. No wonder. Smells like fuel, so at least we're getting fuel to the carburetor. Let me go grab a blowtorch and see if I can dry this thing off. Look at that. The fact that it just flared up tells you it's soaked with fuel. The flames keep flaring up, so we're burning off all this excess fuel. Hopefully that'll get us a spark. Maybe we have no spark at all. Oh yeah, this thing's soaked. See that? Don't try this at home, by the way. None of this is real. This is all animation. Probably. Yeah, that looks a lot better. Okay, let me set that aside. Just set that down here. I'll go ahead and crank it and blow all the excess fuel out of the cylinder too. Be great to know if we have spark. Okay, key on. Am I going to get zapped? I really don't want to get zapped, but we'll find out. I see no spark. No ignition. So that's a problem. bust the vacuum back out of here. So if I were to assume what wires are what, this wire leading down here appears to go down to the fuel shutoff solenoid on the carburetor. So if I had to take a guess, this side is our hot side that turns hot with our key on. So that should tell us which wire to look at on our coil, or is this a CDI ignition? You see one wire going into the coil. Okay, so it seems to end up over here at this wiring harness. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Let me grab the camera for this. Look what I just discovered here. So I said the wiring from this ignition coil goes through here and ends up, watch, if I tug it, it ends up down here. And I'm like, oh, what's that? What is that? Maybe did we find a corroded connector and this is gonna be an easy fix, or? That one with the purple, that's the one that was crusty. It doesn't look very tight, like it's smaller than the rest maybe, but it's not that crusty. Really not that bad, so I think we may have to continue this diagnosis. Okay, so I was looking at the magnet here. This is the magnet that would spin around. As this goes around, it's going to excite the coil on this ignition coil. This looks like a CDI ignition, capacitor discharge ignition. So if you follow that wire leading from the coil, it appears to maybe end up here. And this may be the CDI ignition box. Is this the new component that they just tried to install? Is this crusty? We do have some sort of wires here to test, right? Something should change. When I turn the key on and off, something should change here. I don't know if it's a power or a ground. Maybe they ground out. Sometimes they'll ground out the coil, like when they want to shut the engine off, they'll ground the coil out, and that's how they shut it off. So it may be a system that's designed to be on all the time until that thing turns around and excites it. Actually on closer inspection, this harness seems to go up underneath here, so this may actually be a regulator, a voltage regulator for our charging system. Then does that mean these two wires, one of them goes down here to that fuel solenoid, so this has to be key on off. So maybe we'll check at the solenoid, see if that changes when I turn my key. Okay, so this is where I'm at with this. I've been studying the wiring before I make my next move. So I figured out that, okay, where's my test light thing? So there's the test light. So I figured out that this white wire at the ignition, this one will turn on and off with the key. Right? And then if you go down here, that white wire that turns on and off with the key turns into a red wire, and that strand, which is red and white, so it's just red and white together, ends up over here. You can see the red and white. The red wire, just like I thought, goes all the way to this fuel cutoff solenoid down here. So I need to verify that this is turning on and off, but where does this white wire go? Because the white wire goes to the coil, and the coil is where we're not having our spark. So let me trace this one down, which happens to be a white wire on this end. White goes into yellow. And then here on the ignition, we do have a yellow wire. We have 2 yellow wires. Notice that? 2 yellow wires. 1 yellow wire here, 1 yellow wire here. And if I remember correctly, these will die. It will die if you try to reverse with the blades on without pressing this button, yes? So do we have a case of, is this yellow wire shorted to ground? Because like I said, this is a CDI ignition, and usually on these types of ignition systems, when we want to turn it off, we ground it. Maybe I'm wrong, or maybe we can turn it on and off with a power, but I think it should be grounded when we want it off. Either way, something should change on this yellow wire. Something should do some sort of action change. Either power and ground goes away, or something when I turn this key. So, I mean, this is all kind of a mystery to me. I don't work on these too much. I did back in the day just for my own personal stuff, but I just have to kind of backwards engineer, like follow trace out wires and use my knowledge. Where I pulled the dash back out. There's my hot at all times. Down here at this little box on the purple wire, seems to be hot as all times. Nothing changes when I turn the key. I don't know about any of these other wires. Maybe I should be checking for a ground or something. Okay, so now it should light when I touch ground. Okay, white wire as a ground. Didn't change when I turn the key. So we have a solid power and a solid ground to this little box. The white wire and the purple wire, we don't know what the red wires do. They don't seem to change when I change the key position. You know what? I have a feeling that I know what's wrong with this mower, and I have a feeling that it's going to be a rusted and crusted terminal at that solenoid, the B+ solenoid where everything branches power off of. We should theoretically be able to test for that, but it may be that I have so much resistance due to something like that that this light will not light, and maybe I have it. Maybe I could check for a voltage drop with that cheap little meter, but I mean, where do these wires go? I've got white wires here, one white wire down here that changes colors. This is a lot for my brain to keep track of. Okay, so where is this solenoid? Wherever it goes, oh yeah, I can see it goes like between the frame and the body. Perhaps I need to be looking underneath the battery. And to get this seat off wouldn't be too much trouble. Just slightly more trouble than I want to give it though. Of course, none of these sizes that I grabbed are correct, and it's like mix match sizes. Multiple mix and match sizes. Crust it all together. Yeah, bungee or something. Bungee this thing up. Okay, well, it looks like there's a belt down there. I'm not sure that it looks right, but we haven't even gotten that far. We haven't even gotten the engine running. There's a fuse here. Tell me the fuse is burnt. Fuse is good. Okay. I mean, I see wiring going all over the place, but what is it for? Like, what are these wires back here for? Just somebody added on some accessory? Maybe that has a lot, that, you know, this, whatever this is probably has a lot to do with our problem. I don't see where they attached to though. It has to be underneath, like completely inaccessible. The solenoid has to be. Where is this thing? I see a big fat battery cable going up to the front. Big fat battery cable. Oh, is that it right there? Ooh, it is. Yep, I can see it. It's corroded too. It looks corroded. No, it doesn't look corroded. But we know we have a problem back here because we know we have a problem with the solenoid because we're turning the key on and we're getting that start, signal out of the ignition switch, but it's not making it back to the solenoid, or the solenoid isn't doing anything. So now, how do I access this solenoid? There's one bolt, but how do you pull it out of the hole? Okay, I see. The brackets that hold, look at the little brackets. Okay, those will swing out of the way. Here's the starter solenoid with whatever wiring they added. I wonder if these were like jump start leads. No? Oh yeah, they are. They're fucking jump start leads. These are jump start leads to jump the starter. Bzz, bzz, bzz. That's to jump the starter over. Now I see. So this solenoid has two wires coming out of it. It's got an orange wire and a green wire. And here on the ignition, we've got an orange wire and a green wire. So, okay, the orange one is the S terminal that was lighting up earlier. So the orange wire back here, when I turn that key, should light up. Okay, can I hook my jumper cables up in a way that's not going to short out? Start sparking. Okay, and my test light. We're going to connect one end of the test light to ground. The light should light whenever we got a hot signal. So this is at the key. I don't hear anything back here. Now, it's an orange and white wire over here. Am I getting nothing here? Probably because the pedal, brake pedal probably has to be held. Right? right? So we may have a faulty brake switch up there that could be causing a problem with our cranking, but I don't know about I don't think that this would cause the lack of starting. Got nothing. Nothing. So I think we need to focus back towards the ignition system now that I see what's going on here. Verify I didn't knock anything loose with my test light. Make sure it still works. Okay, so on the yellow wire, what happens? And it's labeled M. Could that be for motor? Magneto? Yellow wire on the back of the ignition. Doesn't do anything power-wise. Now, let me switch this around and we'll check for a ground signal. Look at that. We've got some sort of ground signal here. Doesn't change. Nothing changes when I do the switch. What if I unplug the switch? Nothing. Okay, so the switch apparently has no change on this being grounded or not. Could we have nothing seems to change with that. Oh, look at that. You know, I didn't think of the seat switch. The seat being up would cause it to no start. Did I just waste all my own time? Are you crazy? Are you serious? Did I waste my own time because the seat's not up? There's a seat switch. Can I... I'm so confused right now. Okay, so you can see it dim. The light dims when I push on that switch, but it doesn't go away. So there's something keeping this grounded, and that's probably why it's not starting. I cannot just simply disconnect the seat switch back here because it's got a shorting bar. So it's got this seat safety switch here. You can't just disconnect it for testing because it's got a shorting bar in it. That's kind of mangled up a little bit. Maybe that has something to do with it. So back here on the seat switch, I've got green wires and yellow wires. I've got green wires and yellow wires up here at the ignition. We do know that something changes. Nothing's changing. So I have it disconnecting right now, and oh look, I'm just wiggling right now. I'm just wiggling the wires with it disconnected. Reconnected it. Now that little wiggle, the flicker's gone away when I wiggle it. Probably had something to do with that connector, the shorting bar in there. Is there something wrong with this seat switch or something? How could I defeat this to just test it? I'm not sure what all these wires are for. It's like I'm not sure what to do next. So the yellow one is labeled M. The green ones are labeled G and L. G for ground, L for lights. Okay, that would make sense. Maybe. So theoretically, if I took the ground away from this ignition coil, it should produce a spark and run. Maybe. But I want to know, why is it grounded? Because this is a yellow and black. This appears to be a solid yellow. Solid yellow here. A solid yellow. And a yellow and white. Or is that two solid yellows? This one's a yellow and white and green. Okay, so it would make sense that they want you to be in neutral as well. And when we were dragging this thing, I had it in neutral, but it wouldn't roll. And the shifter does feel really sticky, so maybe it's stuck in gear. It's maybe stuck in gear. it's like one of the fights you go into first. Forward. Maybe there's something all jammed up in the transmission. It does appear to move, but that doesn't mean anything's moving inside the transmission. Well, ladies and gentlemen, new development. I was tracing, I was like, why will this axle not move? Because I'm like, maybe it won't start because it's not a neutral. And it's like, why is it so hard to shift, right? So I'm like, does it have something to do with this brake that seems to be like, there's no resistance, like the brake's stuck on, right? So I'm like, okay. It pulls, there's a little lever and a spring and a cable. So you come back here and I'm like, okay, maybe we have a brake that's stuck on, but look. The axle is broken. So even if I do get this mower running, I cannot use it. So now we're in plan phase. So the change of plans here is that maybe I can get the engine running and salvage my $40, purchase. And maybe I can put this deck on my other mower, because the other mower does run and drive. It just doesn't have a deck. So due to the new discovery of the rear axle being completely broken, which they probably knew about when they sold it to me, but who knows? I would at least like to know if I can get the engine running and salvage the engine. So, what if I just disconnect this little grounded wire and see if I can get some spark to the coil? Disconnect that. Key's on, but now I don't think it would matter. I need to bring my jumper cables up here. Now I have spark, so let's see if we can at least salvage the engine out of this project. Where'd my spark plug socket go? My daughter was just asking about that other mower too, so lucky. Today's her lucky day. Looks like we may be pulling that other mower out after all. Well, that's a good sign. It means that I can salvage this engine for another project. Although I don't think that I need an engine, because the engine on my other mower does run just fine. Wow, it got that cold that fast. Iced up. That's a good sign. We could at least, I can at least run this now. So yeah, we got a broken axle back here, but I'm honestly thinking, I'm like, that'll probably stay together, and I could probably get the engine running and just drive this thing until it literally explodes, drive it till the axle literally crumbles to pieces. Maybe, you know, because the more I look at this deck, it does not look like it's going to be even close to compatible with the other mower that I have. So as far as getting the engine running, fresh gas, carburetor, look at this. The fuel bowl is all one piece. This carburetor is all one piece. You can't even take it apart. So at best, I could replace the carburetor. I could maybe take the carburetor off my other mower and put it on this one just to get it running, but that's not going to gain me much. I already have a running, driving mower that doesn't mow. You know, I guess if I could get this thing half running, half driving, and mowing, then that would be a plus. But maybe my last hope on this carburetor would just be to drain it and then drain all the old fuel and put fresh gas in and just see what happens. Hope for the best. This time, let's try it without the choke on. If I can do it. Probably needs the battery hooked up on the other end too. Because when I take the positive cable away, there's no battery hooked up. Now, since we discovered the wires in the back are for jumping the starter, let's see if that works. Yep, sure does. Well, that's going to conclude part one. We got our answer. I can at least salvage the engine, my $40 engine purchase. The axle in the rear is broken, unfortunately, so I cannot make a mower out of this tractor. I may be able to salvage the deck for my other mower, but I don't know that yet. It looks like it's going to require significant modification to make that happen. Stay tuned.